Defer.
Here we go. We are in round 15 of 16 here at Pro Tour Dragon's Mage. I am Rashad Miller, joined by Zach Hill, and we're about to watch what turns out to be a pretty, a lot of marbles as stated.
Yes.
David
Many marbles on the
Sharpman
line.
versus Joshua Layton.
Yeah, we see Sharpman on the Florida deck's been doing really, really well here. San Diego Zoo, they call it, is a mid-range.
These guys are off to the races. We already have an Experiment 1 and a Loyal Legion Loyalists.
Yeah, Loyalists got in for 1, Experiment 1 about to get in for 2, and Voice of Resurgence, exactly what Sharpman's got to want to cast this turn. I mean, you know, anytime you're up against an aggressive deck, playing a 2/2 that can trade up is very good.
Oh my God, Becky, look at what just happened. Double Burning Tree Emissary into Gore House Chainwalker. Oh
and
my God.
very relevantly, the Loyalist doing a lot of work, because ordinarily, despite being able to put that many permanents on the table, you really can't do a lot about that Voice of Resurgence. But on Josh's next attack, it's not really going to matter if Voice blocks, or really even if Experiment 1 blocks, because all of Josh's creatures are going to have first strike. So they might be able to eat the Loyalist, but not before Josh gets in for a lot of damage.
And also not, you know, insignificant. If there's a Voice token in play for some reason, that guy can't block.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point.
As we have dueling Chainwalkers now for both players.
That is true. Now, the Experiment 1 as a 3/3 is going to be able to block and kill one of those 2/2 Burning Tree Emissaries. So the fact that Sharpman had a 3-power creature right there, very, very relevant for him.
All right, so we have an attack with the Voice of Resurgence.
That is
no blocks.
That is quite the bold attack. If Utterladen has a removal spell for the Experiment 1, you know, Sharpman may be able to regenerate, but that represents a lot of damage from Josh's
That's
side.
right, because after regeneration, the Experiment 1 would be tapped, and the Gorehouse Chainwalker has a +1/+1 counter, so it cannot block.
All right, so we do see a Mizium Mortars for Josh. The question is, does he want to use it right now?
Josh Layton at 16, David Sharpman at 17. And we've kind of reached the wait and think about it segment of this aggro v aggro matchup. You usually don't reach it this early in the game.
Well, yeah, it's a really important turn. I mean, Josh has a lot of lines right here. He can play a Cackler, say go, setting up a bigger attack. He can cast Mortars on the Experiment 1 and attack.
Wait, what type of Cackler? Is it a 2/2 Cackler or a Cackler of Shame?
A Cackler of Shame, aka a 1/1 Cackler. I think you'd want to make it a 2/2 here. He could also play Sacred Foundry, untap, and represent Boros Charm. Maybe try to set up a big block next turn.
Looks like we have a decision here.
Yeah, I think that's what you need to do. You've got to be able to capitalize on your Loyalists being able to take it.
So the Experiment 1 does regenerate from the Mizium Mortars, but that opens up the attack that you just said that could happen. So that's a lot of damage that just got through.
Yeah, and all of a sudden,
and the Cackler follow-up.
Right, and Josh representing a lethal attack right here. I mean, it's not as though Sharpman is without options. He has a lot of blockers he can play. He's got a lot of creatures on the board, and again, that Experiment 1's still there. So, you know, Mizium Mortar is kind of permanent -2/-2. Not the best use of it relative to, I mean, you know, it was what you needed to do, but certainly there have been more powerful Mizium Mortars.
So a Temple Card came down, but there's an attack, and there's double Gore Clan Rampager. Is this Xaxes? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
that
7,
is
8, 9, 10,
exactly
11, 12,
14
13,
damage.
14. That's why you played a Cackler of Shame, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is, you know what? I am not a number scientist, but you know,
As you've made very clear.
I've made very clear multiple times. David Sharpman up 1-0.
Right, so double Rampager, that was all she wrote for Sharpman.
We'd like to thank Card House Games for being an official card retailer here at Pro Tour Dragon's Maze. For all things Magic, Card House Games is one of the premier destinations on the internet. For more information, visit cardhouse.com.
That is an intense vampire box.
So remember those Rampagers we saw? Let's take a look at what that guy can actually do. And I know we know that what we saw the Blood Rush, which is one of the most potent things he can do, but it's also a 4/4 trample creature. That's got to be one of the more aggressively designed cards I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, this card was intended to be very, very heavily pushed out of Gate Crash. I mean, the +4/+4 and Trample compares favorably to Colossal Might, which is already a fine card. And then, of course, having the option to just hard cast as a full 4 Trampler when you're either mana flooded or needed a threat. I mean, Rampager, yeah, just a really, really, really excellent card. And I mean, the other thing you can do, like we just saw, there's just end games. I mean, we weren't even talking about Sharpman being able to present a lethal attack, but I mean, he hit for 14 damage with very little on the board, relatively speaking.
So is this also your pick for most powerful Blood Rush card?
I believe it is. I think when I was a member of R&D,
okay.
I may have made this slide.
Okay. So what? I mean, what's second? What's the second most powerful?
Second
Blood
most
Rush
powerful Blood Rush card. That's a great question. We can go ahead and take care of that. I'll guess. I don't know.
It'll be on the next slide.
There we go. Oh, we've seen Rubble Belt Maka actually at this Pro Tour, so I'm gonna go ahead and choose that.
Okay. The only other one we've seen. So it must be. You know,
there you go.
It's a pretty big sample size at a Pro Tour.
There we go.
All right, so now we're in sideboard. Well, first of all, you're Josh Utterlayton, and you just, I mean, that win was out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Josh Utterlayton, I'd be mad, is what I mean if I was Josh Utterlayton. I think you would got to bring in Boros Reckoner in this matchup. It halts some of your opponent's aggressive starts and trades with some of their mid-range creatures. I also think you may want Active Treason just to capitalize on any of those, the Gore Clan Rampagers they may hard cast. Also, you can get some value stealing, you know, Smiter or something like that. And finally, I think Arrest from Utterlayton is huge here. It deals with Voice of Resurgence and as well as some of the bigger guys. I think from Sharfman's side, you want Mizium Mortars to kind of keep you alive and Unflinching Courage to win against the red decks.
All right, so we actually had an update. We had earlier mentioned that we would have Craig Wesco and Andres Prost in the feature match area, but that match actually didn't play out, so we replaced it with Rob Castellan and Matej Zadokai. And right now, Matej Zadokai is up 1 game due to some mulliganing on Castellan's part, and it looks like he might be going down to 4, well, not 4, maybe 5 or 6 again.
You're saying Castellan mulliganing?
Yes. Castellan's mulligan is 6.
All right, I also get a report that Kibler is up 1-0 over Mahara.
On the back of Cartel Aristocrat.
I'm shocked that Cartel Aristocrat not being played in a Sam Black deck this time, but doing some work on its own.
Did he not find a way to sacrifice creatures in this format?
Oh, I'm sure that Sam did, but that may just not have been what what everyone went with on the team this time.
So, for everyone who wanted to voice their opinions and join in on the conversation of Pro Tour Dragon's Maze, there is a Cover It live chat up right now. You can get to it by going to dailymtg.com and clicking on the Pro Tour Dragon's Maze coverage link.
You saying Magic players like to voice their opinions?
I think they do. I think they like to talk.
That's
mostly
weird.
to hear their own voice, so they're probably saying the things that they're typing.
Oh, I can certainly empathize with that. I understand where you're coming from. Sound of my own voice. Why do you think I have this job?
I thought it was the glasses. They're kind of stylish. The glasses and the hair. I mean, I'm here for the hat.
I am jealous of your hats, for sure.
I mean, you should be. All right, so we're going to game 2. Players are still shuffling up.
And I'm trying to decide what you'd side out. You know, half of me thinks that Domer Raid is really good. The other half of me thinks that Domer Raid is really bad in this matchup. It's hard to protect, but I mean, on the other hand, the card advantage is very relevant. I think Goral's Chainwalker you're not too excited about. You're probably not too excited about Dryad Militant.
Even as a 2-1, even though it can block as a 2-1, or is it just not good enough?
The thing is, it doesn't always block that profitably. I mean, between Legion Loyalist and Fire Fist Striker and Frontline Medic, I mean, it's hard for it to block exactly the way you want it to. It also gets eaten by Electrickery if Utterlayton brings that in out of the board. But, I mean, you're right that, like, you've got to make sure that you have early plays, so kind of challenging to figure out how to sideboard.
Now, what about this one Rush Strider? I don't know if we know exactly what is in there for yet, but is this the matchup that you keep it in for?
Well, so what Chris Vanell was talking about was that you wanted 4 3-power 2-drops, but you didn't want to get hit by detention spheres, so you wanted some diversity. And
Interesting.
sometimes you need to be able to block, even though it's a pretty big blowout to have 1 toughness when, for example, you're attacking into Advent of the Worm through Gore Clan range.
Makes perfect sense. And we are off to the races in game 2. We have a Foundry Street Denizen for Josh Utter-Layton. And the follow-up is a Fire Fist Striker.
Fire Fist Striker, exactly. So able to get into 2 points of damage. Great curve for Josh right here. And Sharpman's going to want to play a threat right now or be facing some serious damage.
Well, it looks like he's got a threat coming because he played a Stomping Ground untapped so that he has access to 2 mana. And there's a Burning Tree Emissary into a Fire Fist Striker of his own.
All right, so Sharpman, just like that, getting parity on the board. Josh Utter-Layton has initiative right now, which should allow him to at least play a creature and power that Denizen through, but definitely good recovery for Sharpman, even if he is behind by a few life points.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that Josh Utter-Layton has any other creatures in his hand, but he does have a couple of Mizium Mortars and an Active Treason. Do you think he's going to set up some type of tempo game?
I mean, I think you have to keep attacking here if you're Josh, especially if you want to capitalize on that Active Treason. I like the play of Mizium Mortarsing the 2/2, playing Legion Loyalist and attacking. I mean, you know, Mizium Mortars can kill a lot bigger creatures than a 2/2, but you're maintaining your tempo advantage, you keep attacking, and you make sure you're not going to get hit on the back end. You're still trading 2 mana for 2 mana.
Right, so there's 3 available mana, so this might be the play that you have just alluded to. Mizium Mortars takes out the 2/2 and attack. That's going to give us a couple of battalion triggers, so that Fire Fist Striker really can't block.
Yeah. That's the other thing about casting mortars there is pretty relevant, is just making sure that you can actually resolve your spell. I mean, Sharpman's got a lot of Boros charms in his deck, and it's a pretty big blowout to get your Mizium Mortars countered by a Boros charm, making your creatures indestructible, because that means you probably aren't going to have any good attacks that turn on top of everything else.
Right, so Sharpman's considering his options. Looks like he has a couple of Voice of Resurgence. He plays the Stomping Ground tapped, so we're only going to see 1 spell, we would assume. He has a Mizium Mortars pushed to the front of his hand, but now he's switching it to a Voice of Resurgence, and now we undoed our 2 land taps.
So a double Voice of Resurgence, something you've got to be pretty excited about if you're Sharpman. On the other hand, I can see wanting to use a Mortars just to get the Loyalist off the table to set up better blocks, or the Fire Fist Striker.
Yeah, the Fire Fist Striker.
It's going to be able to push you through as well.
Yeah, exactly. It was directly stopping any blocking from happening. It looks like that is a Boros Reckoner, like you said, would be coming in.
And yeah, that Reckoner, a huge top deck for Josh right here. He's got exactly 3 lands, and that's going to mean that even if Sharpman musters some blockers, Utter-Layton's going to be able to force through damage no matter what.
So there is the Boros Reckoner. Attack with both of the 2 1/1s, and there's going to be a trade, looks like.
And it looks like Tom Martell actually got game 1 over Martin Juza, we received a report.
Must have been an Aetherling. That went a little bit too fast.
We get reports of that is in fact exactly what happened.
You are correct. That's what I hear. So there is a trade with the Fire Fist Striker and the Legion Loyalist.
And Sharpman falling to 9 on that attack. And Loxodon threatening now to gum up the board.
That is called a brick wall. Loxodon brick wall.
Yeah, is that the errated card name?
I would hope so. But Mizium Mortars, number 2, takes out the Smiter. And down comes the Cackler. Another attack for 5. And David Sharpman is down to a low life total.
Yeah, Sharpman, you have to think, really, really wishes he was able to play both those Voices of Resurgence right now. That is just not what Fate has in line. And this Active Treason, I think, going to spell game over.
So here's 1 red mana. That's going to be a Legion Loyalist. So there we have it.
And the great thing about that Legion Loyalist that turn is it means you don't have to reveal Active Treason.
Wow.
Which allows you to set up potentially a bigger blowout next game.
So Josh Utter-Layton ties it up at 1 apiece. Qualifiers for the next Pro Tour have begun. You could be on the big stage for Pro Tour Theros, taking place October 11th to 13th in Dublin. For more information, visit wizards.com/PTQ. I already used a PTQ joke with you last time, right?
I don't remember.
You
I'd
don't
love
remember?
to hear it again.
Actually it's not a joke. It's actually a true story.
Oh, yeah?
I probably shouldn't be joking about someone's magic career.
That's very insensitive of you.
I know. I'll make it up to him. So here we go. Legion Loyalist is a 1/1 haste and it has battalion. Its battalion trigger is very wordy. I'm going to go through it for everyone.
Please do.
When Legion Loyalists and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control gain first strike and trample until the end of the turn and can't be blocked by creature tokens this turn.
Can't be blocked by creature tokens. So if you have enchantment tokens that can somehow block.
That aren't creatures?
Look, man, I don't know.
Wait,
right?
wait
man.
a minute. Are
Hey,
you
man.
giving us a little bit of was that like a little spoiler?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. You actually have tribal tokens. That's what Theros is all about.
I cannot wait.
Yes. Planeswalker token artifacts.
So is this one of the most powerful 1-drops in these aggressive strategies?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's a Raging Goblin, and if you're don't have Battalion, it's simply a Raging Goblin. But what we see a lot of is just used in concert with Dynacharge at this Pro Tour.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the time, the ability will trigger. You say, okay, whatever, I'll block. But then you Dynacharge and can suddenly kill all your opponent's creatures. I think another big use of it is exactly like it says on the slide, being able to play with haste when your opponent's not expecting you to be able to trigger Battalion. Also a great card to play in concert with the Frontline Medic, which can allow you to attack basically with impunity. And of course, the reason the token clause on there principally is a weapon against Lingering Souls and against Advent of the Worms and Conclave Centaur tokens.
All right, so here we go back to game. So are there any changes to the way you're sideboarding? Like, is this a matchup where there is when you're on the play, you need to have these type of cards, and when you're on the draw, you need to switch out, a couple to be either more defensive or more aggressive?
It's hard to say. I think the big thing you can do if you're Utter Leighton is just board into or keep in more 3-mana spells when you're on the draw. I think maybe you have access to 1 or 2 frontline medics that you wouldn't when you're on the play. That said, I don't even know that statement is true. I think your configurations are going to look relatively similar between Game 2 and Game 3 with these decks.
So in the classic who's the beatdown question,
Okay.
which one of these players is the beatdown?
I think Josh is absolutely the beatdown in this matchup. I mean, the control player usually determined by who has a greater total mana cost of cards in their deck and who is advantaged the longer the game goes. I think with Sharpman's 4/4s and Smiter and Rampager, as well as Voice of Resurgence, which is capable of generating 2-for-1s, I think you have to give favor to Sharpman the longer the game goes, especially if Domergrade's still in this deck. So I think Josh really needs to come out of the gates very quickly. Otherwise, he's just going to lose in favor of Sharpman's.
Yeah, it looks like Sharpman has a couple of creatures that are just a lot bigger than anything that Josh Utterlane can bring out of his deck.
Yeah, he also has 3 copies of Unflinching Courage after board, and if that card is able to stick onto a creature, it's hard to imagine Sharpman losing, barring some kind of crazy act of treason term.
I am a big fan of Armadillo Cloak.
So is Brian Kibler, actually.
He must be playing that card too. So it looks like we have a mulligan. Josh Utterlane didn't like his starting 7. And I think David Sharpman kept. It looked like he might be thinking, but I think he's just allowing the hand reporter to record all the cards that he has in his hand.
That backpack I thought was a Ninja Turtle shell.
I think it is a.
Oh, it's actually a literal Ninja Turtle
It's
shell?
a literal shell of some sort.
Is it
I
a
don't
Kubo
know that by wearing it you become a ninja. you probably become close to a turtle. I'm actually curious as to how it actually, where's the opening and if it's full of maybe frozen pizzas.
It's actually Shelldock Isle. Is one of those.
Interesting.
Okay, maybe that's a lie.
Yeah. Stop lying.
No, we're looking at Sharpman's hand right now. If this is right from the, okay, Sharpman shuffling out early in 10. If the coverage reporter has recorded this, it looks like Experiment 1 Gore-Clan Rampager land for Sharpman. So even though he kept 7, not exactly the most exciting hand, which could potentially bode well for Josh, even as he mulligans to 6.
Now, Sharpman is on the draw, so I guess you have to, and especially if you're the control deck, is this a controlling hand as we see a lead off with an Experiment 1?
I mean, it's you know, you might play the control role. It's hard to say you're a control deck, but I think you've got to be pretty disappointed actually if you're Sharpman. You don't have a 2-drop to follow up that experiment one, and that means that Utter Leighton is going to really be able to get aggressive this turn. And wow, with Burning Tree Emissary in his hand, we've got to expect a pretty good start right now.
This is going to be very explosive. There's one Burn Tree Emissary and there's the Firefish Striker. So 6 points of power on the board for Josh Utter Leighton.
Right, and that means that if Sharpman's even able to muster a sizable blocker right here, only one of his creatures is going to be able to block. I think we're going to see that Militant get targeted, and Sharpman forced to block with Experiment 1 if he wants to stem the bleeding right here.
I think that's what's going to happen as the Dry Militant and the Experiment 1 are both held back. Possibly just trying to get to 4 mana so that a Gore Clan Rampager can be cast as a 4/4?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Sharpman's trying to do. I mean, a 4/4 very, very, very big in this context. The only thing Utter Leighton can do is try to prevent it from blocking with Striker, hit it with Mortars, or trade with Reckoner. I mean, there's answers in Utter Leighton's deck, but it's still one of the most problematic cards.
Well, Sharpman took the opportunity. Yeah, Sharpman took the opportunity to block the Striker so that that wouldn't happen in the future.
That's exactly right, although he is going to fall to 12 from that attack. And Josh at a very healthy 19, and Sharpman's still relatively flooded out. I mean, the thing about these decks is that it's really, really hard for them to make use of lands. You know, technically, once you get to 6, you can cast a huge Mizzium Mortars. That's obviously very relevant. But besides that, you know, you don't have a lot to do with excess mana.
There, and there is the Gore Clan Rampager that's coming down. Preferably, I'm sure it's playing defense. It's sitting beside the Dryad Militant, and we're going to see if there's going to be any response from Josh Utter Leighton.
So relevant to know that Sharpman has a Boros Charm in his hand. He can both use that to try and finish Josh off, as well as just render his creatures indestructible. But can't do that now because he has no untapped mana.
So there's an attack with Boros Reckoner. And funny enough, no blocks.
All right, so you got to be pretty thrilled to get through if you're Josh. I mean, you know, I think Sharpman's setting up his ability to protect the Rampager in order to block some more creatures, but getting Sharpman all the way down to 9 means that he's within range of a pretty big attack, plus just a couple of Boros Charms from Josh.
Looks like Sharpman picked up a Loxodon Smiter and it hits the battlefield.
Wow, and that is a big, big play for Sharpman right here. 1/4/4, you expect Josh to maybe be able to power through. 2, though, it is very hard to get some profitable attacks, but
there's the Mizzium Mortars.
Mizzium Mortars. Josh only has 5 lands, though, so what ordinarily would take out all of Sharpman's creatures, if Sharpman can keep Boros Charm up, he might be able to lock this board down here.
That's exactly right. There is a Boros Charm in Sharpman's hand, so that's going to be the trump for the trump.
Now you see Josh could have attacked last turn with Boros Reckoner and traded with one of the 4/4s. He elected not to do that, presumably because he sees Mortars in his hand. He's going to try to set up a far more profitable attack next turn.
So Sharpman also picked up a Burning Tree Emissary, but I don't know that that will, you know, a 2/2 added to the board. Does that, I mean, is that really that helpful? As we have an attack with the Gore Clan Rampager.
Now, this is a pretty interesting situation here. Sharpman, by attacking with that Rampager, offers Josh the double block. He might be trying to profitably cast his Boros Charm right here, which he thinks he might be able to get a 2-for-1 out of. Utter Leighton knows, however, though, he is setting up a big Mizzium Mortars, so Josh might say, all right, I'll be glad to take your Boros Charm out of your hand right here, because I'm going to make it back the second I draw my 6th land.
So we know there needs to be a double block for any trading to happen. And the block also needs to include the Boros Reckoner. David Sharpman's at 9 life.
I mean, it's certainly possible. You just say, okay, whatever is to blocking, I'm going to start just attacking you back with my Reckoner because you're dead in 3 attacks.
Or, you know, any block with the Reckoner is going to bounce back, you know, 3-ish damage and back to David Sharpman's face.
Yeah, exactly. Reckoner actually, you know, one of the things that Mate was talking to me about earlier was that the red decks in this format are actually a lot more like white decks. They're not packed full of burn spells. They really went with creatures. So Reckoner represents a decent amount of reach in a format like this.
So the Burning Tree Emissary does come down to help play defense for David Sharpman. And now did Josh Utter-Leyton pick up a land? I don't think he did. Looks like he
No, he
drew
did
an
not,
arrest.
but he did draw an arrest, and this is a very, very big arrest. If he hits that smiter back there, he can stem some of the bleeding. Boros Charm can't really do anything about an arrest, and this enables an all-out attack from Josh, turning his Founder Street Denizen, his Emissary, and his Rakdos Cackler, which currently aren't doing a whole lot, into a pretty profitable attack for him this turn. So big, big draw for Josh right here.
Josh actually has enough mana to play both Arrest and Museum Orders.
Yeah, if he wanted to, for sure.
Another update from the back tables. Martin Juza and Tom Martell are tied at 1 apiece, so maybe a little eighthling back in return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those games ending a little bit quicker than I would have expected.
Apparently it was a frog lizard.
A frog lizard.
How many frog lizards are there in this block?
Is that the Pongify variant? Rapid hybridization?
That does create a frog lizard.
That is in fact one for one on guesses today. Batting very high.
Isn't Shamble Shark a frog lizard?
I do not know any of the 7 creature types. They are all insane. Totally insane.
So the arrest does come down on a smiter, and there is 2 blocks.
So yeah, I mean, Utter-Leyton playing into Boros Charm right here, getting sharpened down to 6 besides though, and setting up as many Mizium Mortars for tremendous value. You have to think Josh knows Boros Charm's a possibility right here. He's kind of trading 3 damage in a card for the ability to set up what is likely to be a tremendous Plague Wind style Mizium Mortars if he gets a land. And if he doesn't draw a land, well, that means he's drawing spells. So he can't be too sad about that either.
Now, unfortunately, David Sharfman did not draw a spell. Looks like he picked up another land to go along with his forest. He has a forest and a temple garden.
Yeah, and Sharpman now trying to figure out if he can get in any damage or what his profitable blocks are going to be. At 6 life, he can't really afford to take too many hits right here. And, you know, that Reckoner going to deal at least 2 damage no matter what Sharpman does on the blocking end.
Exactly. So David Sharpman tries to squeak in 2 damage, but the trade happens with the Foundry Street Denizen. So now there's just a lonely Boros Reckoner on the side for Josh Utter-Leyton, but Boros Reckoner does a lot of reckoning on his own.
So what? Explain that block to me, Rashad. Maybe you know, it's if you're expecting to play Gwen, you kind of may want to have the creature. Even if you're not, you know, your opponent's at a very low life total. Oh, okay, so he's just saying, I don't have to cast the card with its overload cost, I
just
guess.
uses it as a removal spell, and there's a second Boros Reckoner, so this isn't looking good. We're at the point, there we have it, the handshake. Josh Utter-Leyton wins 2-1 over David Sharfman. It's looking good for him to make it to top 8.
Yeah, pretty brutal win for Josh right there. I mean, great, you know, setting himself up great for top 8, setting himself up great for player of the year. Looking at his face, though, you may not be able to intuit any of that.
Wait, he looks a little happy. he looks a little happy. Here we go. You get a good look at my hat again, Rashad Miller.
That's all I want to do.
Zach Hill. Well, you get to stare at it for the whole game. You know, we all know he should be looking at the match, but he's just staring at my hat. It's weird. It's a little awkward. So right now, Sheldon is set up for an interview with Josh Utter-Leyton, and I can tell you right now that the other matches, I believe we have the Rob Castellan match has concluded with Matej Zedelkai winning 2-0, because I actually saw in the wide shot that match was not there anymore. And the other 2 matches are still going. We don't have the quote from Castellan, "I got crushed."
Wow. Okay. Well, that about spells it out, I guess.
And not the beverage. And
not Orange Crush.
And not the RME, not the REM song either. All right, so Sheldon is going to be down in the arena, and he's going to be talking with Josh Utter-Leyton. So take it away.
Hey, Sheldon Menery down here in the feature match area with Josh Utter-Leyton. So that last game was a mull to 6, and you still brought it home.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very good draw despite the mulligan. So
there was a lot of thought about the Mizium Mortars, whether you want to save it to Plague Wind him or get it in there and use the removal. What made your choice to use it as the single removal?
Well, I was saving it for a few turns there just to try to overload it. Basically, the reason I ended up using it is because the game was just over at that point. Like, I killed this guy, hit him down to 3 with 2 Reckoners in play. There's nothing he could do at that point. Yeah. So that was the reason why until then. And before, it was definitely trying to wait and get his whole board.
So winning here positions you extremely well, not just for this tournament, but for Player of the Year.
I'm pretty sure I've locked up Player of the Year at this point. So
I'm pretty okay. So you heard it here. Josh Layton says, pretty sure he's locked up Player of the Year. We'll see if that happens, and we'll see how he goes with his run deep into the top 8. And back to the booth.
I guess it's a done deal.
There we go. He's pretty sure.
We got a Player of the Year. Should we go give him the trophy
yeah,
right
yeah,
now?
yeah. Can we just interrupt the tournament right now?
Hold up.
Award ceremony.
I think that's what it was going to be. But before we get to that award ceremony, which is actually going to happen on Sunday, when we officially have a Player of the Year, we're going to be going to the Martin Juza versus Tom Martell match.
All right. Can't wait to see it.
We got a good zoom in. So looks like we have Esper control versus back control. I believe this is game 3, so this is for some amount of marbles. Probably all of the marbles.
Well, I want to tabulate these marbles. I want a jar of marbles.
Well, I'll bring a jar of marbles
I appreciate
next time.
that.
Next time I'll bring a jar of marbles. Do you like the ones with like the cat eye marbles?
I don't know. Surprise me.
I'll surprise you with a jar of marbles. So I'm going to... we're getting our camera set up right now, but right now it's still pretty early in the game. Looks like we're on turn 4, turn 5, and we're about to go right to the overhead view for you right now. Looks like Sphinx's revelation just happened, so our cards in hand may not be quite ready yet. But I can tell you right now that Martin Juza has a Sin Collector and a Spectre in play. It looks like it just snatched a Temple Garden off the top of Tom Martell's deck. Tom Martell just cast his Sphinx Revelations, and he has a Loxodon Spider in play.
Now, certainly, if your opponent's going to resolve Sphinx's Revelation, you're not going to be too mad if it's a Sphinx's Revelation for only 2 cards.
I guess you can't be too mad about that.
Now, we are seeing Nightvale Spectre do some very valuable work, though, taking a Temple Garden off the top of Martell's deck.
That's step 1 of changing it into an Ophidian, right?
That's exactly right.
So far and away is going to well, just the away part of far and away is going to cause the Loxodon Smiter to hit the graveyard. And not a lot of action for Tom Martell, but this is a control mirror, so it does need to be as action-packed in the beginning.
Speaking of action-packed, both these players have a lot of juice in their hands. We see Voice coming down. We saw Sphinx's Revelation resolve for Tom, and just absolutely every possible thing in Juza's hand right now. It's just a matter of what threat he wants to present the most.
And there's a Blood Baron of Viscopa. That's a threat.
That certainly is a threat, and it's a threat that is going to hold that Voice of Resurgence off for at least this attack.
4 mana for Tom Martell, and there is a Jace Architect of Thought. Mini Factor Fiction, as I've heard it called so many times, and 3 spells, the rare 3-spell Mini Factor Fiction.
There are very few better feelings than hitting 3 spells off a Jace -2.
But one of them is a Gatekeeper Vine, which is sort of like a land.
It is very good at protecting that Jace right now, however, for it to activate one more time.
So it looks like the split is Dispel and Gatekeeper Vine, and I can't remember what that other card was.
I believe it is a Sphinx's Revelation.
It's a Sphinx's Revelation. So that's why it's so far off away from the rest of the cards. Hopefully forgot.
I'm playing this, getting an island, playing the island.
But it looks like he chooses not the Sphinx's Revelation. So
and very relevantly, when he chooses not Sphinx's Revelation there, he doesn't actually have to place it in his graveyard. With the Gatekeeper Vine, he puts it on the bottom of his library
and then he
shuffles it right back in. So still not losing out on the opportunity to cast some pretty big Sphinx's Revelations this match.
Yeah, not a lot of shuffle effects in this block that are being used, but that's definitely one that turned out to be a little bit more valuable than just getting a land.
Yeah, I think Gatekeeper Vine, one of the best pieces of technology to come out of the Team Star City deck for this tournament.
So now the ball's in Martin Juza's court, and he does have a very good hand. He has another far and away.
Oh, did I just ask? 4. No, that's 4.
And as well as the Aetherling and Dispel on the Sphinx's Revelation, 2 more lands, so he can kill that Jace this turn if he wants to. He can obviously bounce Voice of Resurgence and Edict away the Gatekeeper Vine. He could just say, I don't care about Voice of Resurgence. and I mean, he could theoretically just bounce the Gatekeeper Vine, although I don't think that's exactly what he wants to be doing.
At what point do you need, how late do you need to wait before you can play your Aetherling against this deck?
I think you really want to be able to just keep up 2 mana in case, any particular bad thing happens. I think what's going on right now, though, is that, Juza just going to lean on his Syncopate and not really get in a hurry. I mean, he just gained 4 life and was able to get that Gatekeeper Vine off the table. He's really in a commanding position. There's no real need to commit anything else to the board right here, unless he's just incredibly confident that if he plays his 7th land, his Aetherling, nothing bad is going to happen to it. And
Well,
maybe that's what he's doing.
And there's the Aetherling.
14, go.
So we have another result. Makahito Mahara beats Brad Kibler 2-1. That's in the back tables.
So, I mean, we see Martell with the rapid hybridization use only 1 mana to protect his Aetherling. Right now, I mean, he can Supreme Verdict and catch it with a rapid hybridization. So, I mean, Juza, I won't necessarily say a greedy Aetherling, but Martell's going to really punish him this turn, it looks like.
I was actually wondering if there were any non-Supreme Verdict spells in Tom Martell's deck that can, target an Aetherling and destroy it. Because at that point, he could have waited until the end of, Martin Juza could have waited to the end of his turn and, blinked out the Aetherling while Tom Martell was tapped out, and then it wouldn't come back until the end of Tom Martell's turn, making it safe from all, Supreme Verdict effects.
Right. The only things that could hit it then would just be a Cyclonic Rift, the Rapid Hybridization, or Celestian Charm, although Juza probably knows he doesn't have it.
And there is the Rapid Hybridization, I believe.
And you can tell Juza visibly surprised.
Really? That's what we heard.
Of course, Juza is, however, top decking like the champion he is, and drawing a second copy of Blood Baron of Vizkopa after Tom really sort of dug his way out of the out of last turn.
And there's the Blood Baron, 2 mana left up for a Far if need be, or a Syncopate for 1 if Tom Martell uses up, all of its mana for something.
So what happened to the 3/3 token?
The 3, I believe this was in response to the Supreme Verdict was cast, and then Aetherling was blinked in response. In response, there was rapid hybridization.
So yeah, he gets it, and then Supreme Verdict resolves.
Yeah.
It's not as though Aetherling paying 1 counters Supreme Verdict.
So attack with the Blood Baron is going to bring Martin Juza up to 18, Tom Martell down to 10.
Go.
Tom in reasonable shape if he can draw an answer to that Blood Baron. He's got 2 Dispels in his hand, so he can deal with Sphinx's Revelation Syncopate in all likelihood, but that's easier said than done. Blood Baron of Vizkopa, not really the easiest card to remove from the board.
Very few cards that have been used to remove it. Mizium Mortars, which obviously is not in any of the colors that are in this deck. But, Rapid Hybridization seems to be a great card to just to deal with those pesky creatures at instant speed, because most of the creatures are better than a 3/3 Frog Lizard.
Exactly. You've got Loxodon Smiter, you've got Voice of Resurgence, you have Advent of the Worm, you have your own Aetherlings. You don't really care that much about a 3/3. You're also gaining a ton of life. But the ability to remove permanents at instant speed that are explicitly hard to deal with, on the other hand, exceptionally valuable.
Looks like Tom Martell was considering an attack, but instead decides to play Aetherling first to give his Elemental +1/+1.
And that is just a crushing Aetherling right there. Exactly what he needed. Juza has Syncopate. Martell probably going to snap Dissipate.
So this Syncopate is going to have to be for 4, which means 5 mana is going to be tapped for Martin Juza. And there is a Dispel, which is going to counter that massive Syncopate for just 1 mana. Attack for 2 with the Elemental. That's going to bring Martin Juza down to 14. Let's see what Juza can come up with now.
And very relevantly, he still has mana to flicker Aetherling out. So pretty savage top deck by Martell of the Aetherling. On the other hand, he does not have 2 blue mana untapped.
So we have a far and away, and does... Oh, wow. Are none of those mana blue?
Or is that a temple? Another temple?
Is that a
garden
temple?
over there?
Those were 2 white mana.
Wow.
So that far and away actually
Wow.
did exactly what it's supposed to do to an Aetherling. I think that's the first Aetherling I've seen in the graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that was a breeding pool. I'm shocked that Tom doesn't have access to more blue mana, and I'm sure he is not thrilled by that either.
And this Blood Baron of Viscopa just got ambushed by by a 5/5 worm that was just advented.
So we are seeing some very good draw steps by both of these, or from both of these players. Big Aetherling, big Advent, double Sphinx's Revelation from Juza, however, capable of getting him right back in this game, but he is not excited to lose out on access to that Baron.
I mean, he can't be too upset because right now he has access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 extra cards.
Right. I mean, you
Is
know,
that-
Tom might continue the top decking spree and rip another counterspell, but you know, at a certain point, your luck has to run out.
So here we go. Looks like we're going to try to find a Dispel, but someone already had a Dispel for the first Sphinx's Revelation. So 5/5 token hits the battlefield. Blood Baron of Viscopa hits the graveyard.
All right.
Martin Hughes is tapped out, so let's see what
Cards.
Tom Martell can top deck. It looked kind of blue.
Yeah, it looked like an island, but it may not have been. At least-
No,
oh,
it kind
wow!
of looked like a Sphinx's Revelation is what I was going to say, but
What
I
a
just-
draw from Tom.
I just wanted to see. I didn't want to, get your hopes up, but it looks like you were quite excited for that.
Draw step after draw step after draw step, producing answers. You know, Tom, again, not thrilled that he didn't have access to more on tap blue, but the Advent into Sphinx's Revelation, giving him a very, very real shot this game. He's got to figure out how much to Revelation for. He has one more copy of Dispel on his deck, trying to decide if he wants to leave one more mana open. But
He's
I think
doing
he
it for
says
7, but he can also draw an island.
That's also a really good point.
Still
Yeah,
has a land
Rashad.
drop for this turn.
And that's, you're probably pretty confident if you draw a Dispel, you have access to at least one untapped blue source. May not have the Dispel, but does have a fresh grip of 7 cards. And of course, Juza capable of coming right back.
And here we go. This is reminding me of the last Pro Tour we were at. A lot of Sphinx's Revelations going back and forth.
And
Yep.
cast it for 8.
This
And-
was for 8.
Yeah, so it's Revelation for 7, right into a Revelation for 8. All of a sudden, we are playing
This is a brand new
Ultimate
game.
Game of Magic. Yeah, exactly.
Let's just start over. Wait, was there a card in play or something? What just happened here?
Martell, though, definitely not hesitating to chip away at Juza's life in 5-point chunks. And we see an Aetherling right here is going to allow him to get what I guess we've dubbed Aetherling Initiative. You definitely want to be the first person to attack with that card. And Martell, careful to leave up as many blue mana as he possibly can.
Yeah, he looks like he's not going to make. I don't know if it was a mistake before, but
No, I don't think it was. Yeah, I think he only had access to that amount.
so
of mana,
just to
which
be
is
sure,
unfortunate.
Martell's going to lose 2 life and play a Hollow Fountain untapped just for 1 more blue mana source, and play the and play the Aetherling.
Right.
5.
Yeah, again, earlier, Martell was limited on his number of blue, and he had to dispel, to make sure the card resolved, at least force Juza to show him an answer.
So let's take a look at what Martin uses fresh. I guess 7 cards is.
Yeah, and definitely an Aetherling of his own, a Nightveil Spectre, and now it's sort of not really the time for that card. A couple Sin Collectors to take whatever Martell's slow rolling in his hand, and of course a big Obsidian Ghost Council that can really tilt the race in his favor.
Another creature that's very, very hard to deal with.
Yeah.
I think we're going to lead off with the Sin Collector, and there it is.
And these Sin Collectors really important to this matchup. I mean, you get into a war of counter spells, and Sin Collector can strip those away, give you information about your opponent's hand, and leave a 2/1 body with which to threaten Jace, protect your own Jace, or chump block.
I mean, this is a classic strategy when you're dealing with control mirrors. If you have access to black mana and discard, you're going to have an edge against the dedicated control decks that are, just countering spells and destroying permanents that are in play.
That's exactly right. So Tom Martell electing not to cast Cancel on the Sin Collector so that it basically can say, all right, choose that. Maybe his opponent will choose the Wrath. Also, maybe you don't want to tap the mana this turn.
Tapping the mana could be an issue. I don't know how many blue sources. Looks like there's only 3 blue sources open for Tom Martell, and that will only leave 1 Aetherling activation.
Yeah, so you're right. You don't want to tap 2 blue sources just to deal with a 2/1.
And there's an Aetherling right back for Martin Juza.
So 18 on Juza's side, 18 life points, 11 from Tom Martell. Martell going to be able to get in the first Aetherling attack, but 8 points of Juza's Aetherling plus 2 from the Sim Collector is 10.
It looks like Tom Martell just drew a second Aetherling.
Wow. And very relevant right now because Juza could attack for 8 with Aetherling and cast Obsidian Ghost Council, meaning that is 10 points of damage that Tom cannot block. 10, though, is not 11, and that means that unless Juza can deal 1 more damage or get that Sin Collector through, Tom Martell can get 2 Aetherling attacks in short order.
Yeah, and it's going to be very hard for that Sin Collector to get through because Aetherling basically has Vigilance for just 1 blue mana.
Right. Tom attacking, basically forcing Juza to tap some mana, making sure he can't counterspell Martell's next Aetherling, willing to trade a Worm token to do it, and also willing to threaten to take the Sin Collector off if he ordered blockers differently. Mainly, though, I think that attack designed just to tap Juza's remaining mana and ensure no Psychic Sphere action takes the second Aetherling out.
Yeah, so it looks like the order of the blockers is Sin Collector, then Aetherling, if I caught that correctly.
I think he put Aetherling first.
So it's Aetherling, then Sin Collector.
Right. Again, if you put Sin Collector first, Juza wouldn't have to tap his 3rd mana to increase his Aetherling's toughness.
I'm sorry, how many cards? There you go.
So this also gives Martin Juza the option of just pumping his Aetherling.
Yeah, I think that's what he did.
Okay, so he did pump his Aetherling on defense to keep it alive.
Exactly.
Which also just both creatures, no creatures die on Martin Juza's side.
I think the worm dies. Oh yeah,
the worm dies, but not Martin Juza's creatures.
Exactly.
Where the other way, at least the Sin Collector dies.
3 times.
Right. Wait.
So the Sin Collector had to have been first.
Yeah. Or the players did something.
I think it was Sin Collector first.
Okay.
That's the only way that result would have happened.
But then why do you pump toughness there if you're using if it's Sin Collector first? I don't know.
Well, it has to be Sin Collector first, else you wouldn't be able to deal, because there's only 5 damage to 5 damage.
Right. I think the players may have just binned the Sin Collector or whatever, or there's something. Whatever. There are 2 Aetherlings on Tom Martell's side of the table.
It's 2 Aetherlings
There's
to 1.
1 Aetherling on Juza's side of the table.
Those are the real numbers that matter. How many Aetherlings each player has.
We've heard of card advantage. Now we're talking about Aetherling advantage.
Well, I just call it Ling advantage.
Ling advantage, yes.
Because if one player plays like a Morphling or a Torchling, then you still have to add those in. You have to consider those.
So I mean, this could be very relevant as if Juza was able to attack with 2 points, if he was theoretically able to remove the Aetherling, which granted is very hard to do given that he doesn't have an answer in his hand, would need to Jace for it. I could have theoretically attacked for 8 with Aetherling, 2 with Sin Collector, and cast Obsidian for the win, but that's a lot of mana and a lot of answers that he doesn't necessarily have right now, so he needs to come up with an answer to those Aetherlings in short order.
All right, so it looks like Martin Juza considered, he has 4 mana off to the side. That could be for a Jace,
We're both
but I think he was considering playing Obsidian right now.
Yeah, I have infinite mana.
Did Juza say we're both at 11?
I think they're counting land.
Lands.
11 land.
That's a Jace.
In which Martell's response was, "I have infinite mana," which is actually pretty tough to deal with.
So again,
So they are actually both at 11 life.
Oh, okay. Because if Juza was at 14, if he activated Jace's +1, Martell could still swing back for exactly 14 points of damage.
That doesn't do anything.
So 2 land and a Sin Collector, and Tom Martell says none of these cards do anything.
I will split them Sin Collector in 2 lands.
So 2 lands go to the bottom. Sin Collector goes to Martin Juza's hand. Still facing unblockable lethal damage.
Right.
Down comes Obsidian. which gains Martin Juza to life.
No, yeah. Again, very true. Again, if Juza was at 14, he could activate Jace's +1, gain 2 with Obsidat, and be out of range of a lethal attack. But turns out Juza is not, in fact, at 14.
So there's another card in. Oh, it's a Night Veil
You
Spectre.
read a showboating here?
And there goes the Night Veil Spectre.
I'm going to try to kill you.
And Tom Martell says, I'm just going to go for it.
Right, and Juza basically saying, all right, well, I'm going to make you do the
good.
operations,
You're
right?
at 13.
Yeah, if you're absent-minded for a moment, you miscount, you might just bin both your Etherlings and feel very awkward about it.
The awkward fifth
I'll
pump.
make both of my creatures unblockable. I have 4. I have 4. And I have 3 blue left over.
Let's
The
make
posh-
sure these operations get
I will attack with both of my
executed
unblockable
correctly.
creatures.
Posh
and pump
for
from
the
each
perfect
to
situation, and there's the hand. Tom Martell wins 2-1 over Martin Juza.
Pretty epic game we saw there. Some fierce top decks
Can I get
back.
my, use one of my cards, I think. Yeah.
You know, I think I love the fact that Aetherling it is,
I
is
had
the
one
win
revelation
condition
left. I
for
had to
these
rip it and
control
then-
decks because you don't get into those really grindy, I have to mill my opponent out or attack with some
Buy a lot.
reasonable 2/2 flyer that
We have to do the exact brick
takes
card.
Right, and
10
then
to
you hit the
15
brick.
turns to beat your opponent, or
Yeah,
20 to 30
your
turns
draws weren't-
because
yeah,
of
if you-
Sphinx's Revelations. Here you go, back to the booth, Rashad Miller, Zach Hill. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I mean, we saw some massive top decks, some really huge swings that game. There were times I thought Juza couldn't possibly lose. There were times I thought Tom couldn't possibly lose. Really well-played game on both sides, and, it was an exciting match to watch. But, yeah, you were talking about Etherling. That card was explicitly designed to make sure that matchups like this ended. You know, we were playtesting block constructed before Dragon's Maze.
Okay.
And there were all kinds of Sphinx's Revelation mirrors who were killing each other with psychic spirals. It was like, this is ridiculous. You know, we need a way to end these games and make sure something actually happens. Also, just really cool to print a really awesome Morphling variant that's relevant now for, the modern era of creatures.
Right.
Morphling was one of the coolest creatures ever for a long time. Kind of embarrassing now with today's creature curve, though. So Etherling, kind of our update, even gets some pretty cool art to show for it. So I'm really happy with what that guy is doing today.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be happy about how it's actually going to speed up the standard environment too, because that kind of suffered from some of the slower games. But you know what? Let's hear from our winner, Tom Martell, with Sheldon Minery.
Hey, I'm Sheldon Menery down here in the feature match pit with my very good friend Tom Martell, who I think I predicted was going to win this whole thing.
I think you did. Yeah, I think you gave me that prediction.
Are you gonna win?
I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm out of contention now for top 8. I believe. I mean, maybe something crazy happens with tiebreakers. X and 4. I think I probably just going to draw in the top 16 next round, hopefully. And as we saw, we saw Raptor wrap up the top 8 there. He needed the top 8 to get team captain. He pulled that out, so congrats to him, obviously. And hopefully something crazy happens and I make top 8, but it's looking doubtful right now.
So it looked like in that match you were kind of dead, and then there was a comeback.
All 3 games, I was just way behind. I think only the 3rd game may have been on camera, maybe the end of game 2. I don't remember when you cut over. All 3 games were kind of insanely swingy. I kind of drew like perfect one-outers, a couple 6 spots where I drew the rapid hybridization we saw in game 3 to kill the Aetherling. Did the same thing in game 2 off of a Jace to kill a Blood Baron that was going to eat my Jace. It was really back and forth. I know that Sphinx Revelation was my last one that I ripped there to obviously draw a million cards, get back in it. Then I only had 2 Aetherlings left. I had to draw an Aetherling, and I had to fade 100 outs from Juza. Because the Aetherling mirrors are really kind of crazy. You can never kill one. But if you're racing with Aetherlings, you can just tempo back and forth. So things like Azorius Charm and Far Away actually buy you a lot of time. And so his deck's much better suited for that kind of a race situation because I only have 1 way to interact with his, and he probably has like 7 ways to interact with mine. So it's almost a miracle, really, that I was able to pull that game out, even when I had the 2 Aetherlings to fade that Jace kind of mini-foff.
Yeah, because that Obsidat could have just killed you.
Oh, right.
You take 10, and it's like, oh look, here's Obsidat.
It's actually kind of insane. So like earlier in that game, if I only had 3 blue, so we saw him be able to far away my first Aetherling. So I only had 2 left in my deck. Yep. That in of itself was pretty frustrating because I was really flooded, but only 3 blue sources. And obviously the deck has a ton of blue mana. In that last spot, on that very last turn, when I attacked, I tanked for how much to hit him for. I ended up only hitting him for 7. Because I hit him for 8, I wanted to be able to play around him having an Azorius Charm in his hand and still be able to play my second Aetherling with 2 more blue up. So I decided that like, I could either hit him for 7 or play a shock land and keep up another blue that way. Thank goodness I decided to do one less, because if I played the shock land, I would have been 2 lower life and I would have been dead to his Obsidat plus Aetherling. So I wasn't even really thinking about Obsidat. I actually got very lucky that I kind of just instinctively said, it's better to play this safe and not take any more damage. Because typically in Aetherling races, only multiples of 8 matter. So whether you're at 11 or 10, it doesn't seem to be that relevant. It turned out to be super relevant in that game.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I know that was a big battle of the Titans, and you're probably mentally tired after that. Tom Martell, we'll wish him good luck for the last round if he's going to play it out. I'm Sheldon Menery down here in the feature match area. We're going back to the booth.
Now, I haven't watched all of Sheldon's interviews, but from the ones that I did hear and see, I'm pretty sure that that's the 3rd person that he had picked to win this tournament.
Look, man, you got a hedge.
You know what? I could go through. I think probably every person he's interviewed, he already picked to win this tournament. But you know what? Let's just send it back to the news desk.
I can handle that.
We don't have to talk more about Sheldon's wild and crazy predictions. Let's just let the news desk tell you what's actually going on in this tournament.
Hey guys, welcome back to the news desk. Marshall Sutcliffe here. Wow. I gotta say, myself and the camera crew all huddled around one of our monitors watching these matches. This has been some really nail-biting stuff. I've got our own Richard Hagan over at the wall. He's gonna give us the full update. Rich, what's going on, man?
I don't have any notes, Marshall. I don't have any notes. That's because I don't think I need them anymore. Let's see. Remember this number 4 down here? I said 4 was very dangerous. 4 put you right on the edge. 4 meant you needed help. 4 meant you weren't in control of your own destiny. Let's take a look at our second column here. 11-4, Chris Fennell had a phenomenal record coming in a terrific season, but at 11-4 may have come up short. Dennis Rashid of Sweden, 11-4, the dreaded 4th loss. Nicholas Cuenca, 11-4. Christian Fair, very definitely out now at 10-5. He got paired up in the last round at 10-5. Certainly no chance for him. Gabriel Nassif, we're waiting on his result, but he already has 4 losses. Let's see. Now, Andre Prost of Latvia, 12-3. That's the significant number. Add them up in your head. The number of people with 3 wins or less, that's 1. Let's go up. Brian Kibler, 11-4. Ouch. 11-4 at the top, that's for Michael Burnett. So far we have 1 player on 3 losses or less. Let's go across to the other side. You can see it here. Josh Utter-Layton, 12-3, defeating David Schaffman. He has 3 losses there. Dusty Ochoa of the US, 3 losses. Matej Zatlkai of the Slovak Republic, 3 losses. Andrew Shrout, Johnny Hot Sauce, as we say in England, 12-3. David Schaffman, 11-4 because of his loss to Josh Utter-Layton. So that 4 could be bad news for the Floridian, the former Pro Tour champion from Nagoya 2011. Makahita Mahara, 2006 world champion, 12-3. 3 the big number there. Craig Wesco, 13-2. What a performance for him on the back of 6 straight draft wins. Rakdos all the way for him. And then small angry white men turning sideways. Judges familiar. And then Rob Castellan, 13-2. An insane performance. Let's count up the players with 3 losses or less. We have Andre Prost, that's 1. Josh Utter-Layton, 2. Dusty Ochoa, 3. Matej Zatlkai, 4. Andrew Shrout, 5. Makahita Mahara, 6. Craig Wesco, 7. Rob Castellan, 8. Remember what we play for? Top 8. Now, there's a caveat to all this. Tomorrow, when the top 8 come back, whoever finished higher in the 16 rounds of Swiss gets to choose whether they play first or, theoretically, second in each of the matches. Now, it turns out, if you're playing a super aggressive Boros Blitz deck, say, like, you know, maybe a Josh Utter-Layton who wants to go turn 2, Burning Tree Emissary, another thing, smash, 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 high seed is really a big deal. So let me ask you, if you think that you're safe, for example, 39 points, 39 points. These two guys, who will not be paired against each other, by the way, they've already played, they might decide, I quite fancy being top seed on 42 points. And if they, because they must be paired down, that's the nature of it, if Castellan, say, is paired against Mahara, Wesko gets paired against Shrout, or Zatlkai, or even Josh Utter-Leighton, then everything is suddenly up for grabs. If the top 8 all decide to be gentlemen and shake hands, they're gonna be the top 8. Right now, no one cares more about this than Josh Utter-Leighton, because by beating David Schaffman, if he can ID this last round, he's gonna be player of the year. I can tell you, Nassif has won. It says 10-4, it's just gone to 11-4. So if Castellan and Wesko decide to be ruthless, decide to be brutal, decide to play for the #1 seed tomorrow, Nassif, with that win, he's right at the top of the X4s. He's live going into the last round. But those 4 losses, it's not in their hands anymore. It's in the hands of the people with 2 and 3 and 3. And they could be your top 8. Marshall.
Wow, yeah, so there's a lot going on out there this weekend. We see that we are narrowing it down to a top 8. We might actually have one. We don't know for sure. We're going to find out right when the players sit down on the next round. Even then, there's a lot of prize money, there's a lot of pride, and there's a lot of pro points up for grabs. Everybody's scrambling to try to make gold, to try to make platinum. But one group that doesn't need to worry about it as much as the others are Hall of Famers. We had a ton of them out here this weekend, and they performed very, very well. For the full story, let's go take a little look at what Pro Tour historian Brian David Marshall has in store for us.
Hi everybody, this is Pro Tour historian Brian David Marshall here at the Tournament Center, Pro Tour Dragons Maze in San Diego. Rich Hagon, Pro Tour statistician with me, and we've been talking a lot, names that have been up on the big board, Gabriel Nassif, Brian Kibler, we throw around the term Hall of Fame. We talk about Kai Budde, John Finkel, we talk about the words Hall of Fame. What does it mean to be a Pro Tour Hall of Famer? We know what they get for being in the Hall of Fame. They get to come to the Pro Tour, they're gold. How did they get to be in the Hall of Fame, and why are these players so consistently doing so well at the Pro Tour these days? I mean, we saw every single one of the Pro Tour Hall of Famers who came to Pro Tour Dragons Maze made it to day 2.
And how many were there? It wasn't 3 or 4 or even 7 or 8. 14 Magic Pro Tour Hall of Famers came here, laid it on the line, and said, you know what, kids, still got it.
Yeah, and these guys have won Pro Tours, they've won Player of the Year titles, and they still, like, you know what, I'm going to take a week off of my life. I'm going to go hole up in kind of a dark conference room, somewhere in a hotel. I'm just going to play Magic for a week and try to kick the butt of 300 other people here in the room. Let's take a look at some of the Hall of Famers who were in attendance at this event and talk about how they got here. You can't start talking about the Hall of Fame without talking about 2 players in particular. John Finkel, a first ballot, first class Hall of Famer. He played at the very first Pro Tour. He's still playing today, still competitive. Take a look at this, 509 lifetime pro points. He's platinum player again. He's won almost $350,000 playing Magic, and he will tell you that total does not include nationals.
Indeed it does not, at which he's rather good. You see there, Pro Tour New York champion, Worlds 2000. My first time in the commentary box was for Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur 2008. It was thrilling. I think Guillaume Waffatapa of France is one of the finest players, especially of control, ever to sleeve up Magic cards. He lost 3 times at Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur in 2008 to John Finkel, John Finkel.
This line is 14 Pro Tour top 8s. 14. We're not going to see a number like that. We don't even have another double-digit number on any of these slides. The most anyone else has gotten is 9. Oh, that's not true.
Wait.
That's not true.
Do you know who has that 9? It's Gabriel Nassif.
Yes.
At 11-4.
Yep.
With a chance
at the top 8.
Making it
so let's
10.
take a look at the next slide. argue. This is the player, when you get into an argument about who is the best Magic player of all time, you argue John Finkel, Kai Buda.
How can you argue? Kai only has 505 Pro Tour points, and John has 509. So,
and the reason that Nationals money is so contentious, you see, Kai has won just a hair more money at the Pro Tour and Grand Prix circuit than John Finkel, $362,000. John contends that with Nationals money, he would be the #1 money earner of all time in the game.
now, we talked about the 14 Pro Tour top 8s for John Finkel, but when it comes to closing, have a look at this. 10 Pro Tour top 8s for Kai, 7 times he won the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a 700 batting average once he gets to the top 8 of a Pro Tour.
Tell me what Phoenix Foundation is. Well, actually, I know, but
Three-person teams was a regular format. We're going to see this in Grand Prix Providence in a couple weeks. 3-person teams was a regular format on the Pro Tour for a number of times. 3-person teams playing against other 3-person teams. Phoenix Foundation was the end boss of 3-person team formats. They just won multiple Pro Tours. Kai Buda, Dirk Babarowski, Marco Blum from Germany. Just unbelievable.
yeah. So that's the juggernaut. Let's see who else we've got next. It's Brian Kibler. Well, you know this guy.
This is a name we've been throwing around a lot today. He has an outside, probable shot at making the top 8 here if everything fell his way. He's going to be 11-4. He's certainly going to be in the top 25 of this event. And then you take a look, young guy still, 367 lifetime points, almost $250,000 won.
And worth bearing in mind, he has a career hiatus in the mid-2000s. Won a Grand Prix in Toronto, only the 6th Grand Prix ever held, Toronto 1997. Around about 2004, basically left the game, came back 5 years later for Austin, Honolulu, and
Austin and Honolulu, those would be his wins.
Yes, that's not his top 8s. That's just his straight, honest to God, I won the Pro Tour.
5 Pro Tour top 8s, which by the way is an astounding number. It's a lot of people consider it, like the 3,000 hits of the Baseball Hall of Fame. You get 5 Pro Tour top 8s, you have a really good shot at making it into the Hall of Fame.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because 5 in and of itself is not a huge number. And you have to remember, including World Championships, there have only ever been 80 or so of these events in history. Round about that, 80, 85. And there's only 8 slots at every final table. So 650-ish chairs have been laid out on Pro Tour Sundays. And these guys have taken 5, 4, 6, 9, 14 of them all for themselves.
And, not someone to rest on his laurels. Yes, Hall of Famers get gold. He's platinum next season again. So this is someone who's just dominating the game, doing really well, writing about the game, an amazing ambassador for the game.
Who's next?
Well, this was a kind of a surprise. Bob Marr is someone we haven't seen in a while. He's considered one of the top 3 or 4 players of all time. We saw him come in, make a great run early on yesterday. Let's keep moving through. Let's take a look at some of the other Hall of Famers who are here.
Yep, who's next? We have Paulo Vita Dama de Rosa.
Is he the 3rd best player of all time? This is something you've put forth.
I have argued that he very well could be. He has 9 Pro Tour top 8s, right up there with Nassif, just behind Kai and John. 12 Grand Prix top 8s. And the thing that I love, more than 63% win rate, averaging at Pro Tours and GPs. Think of all the games you play at home where you don't see your 3rd color of mana, where you keep 5 land and draw 5 more land, where you're playing mono red and the first 3 creatures your opponent plays say protection from red. That's happened to Paulo hundreds of times, and still he averages 2 out of 3.
Yeah,
crazy.
Just a phenomenal player, great thinker about the game. Gabriel Nassif, we've been talking about him. One of my favorite Magic players. I love watching him. I love seeing the decks he brews up. I love watching him play. I love his attitude. 9 Pro Tour top 8s. He's got 2 titles. He's got a title in the Grand Prix. One of them came like a week after winning a Pro Tour, and he's a consensus top 5 player of all time.
Do you know what? The hits keep on coming. Who's next? Here we go. It's V. Moshevitz.
V. Moshevitz. He won a Pro Tour in Tokyo 2001, a block Pro Tour. He's got 4 Pro Tour top 8s. He's done well at the Grand Prix circuit. He's an amazing writer. I think one of the best writers in the game, and just one of the best deck builders that we've ever seen.
Ever, absolutely. And on we go. This time we have Shuhei Nakamura to show you from Japan.
515 lifetime pro points.
Yeah, now that's just crazy. And 20 Grand Prix top 8s. This is the man who made global travel the thing to do. He went everywhere. He was a star of the European Grand Prix circuit.
Played more than 2,000 Grand Prix and Pro Tour matches.
It's just
2,000. That's a literal ton.
It's just crazy. Come on, keep them coming. All these people are here, remember.
Speaking of deck builders, Rob Daugherty, a great deck builder, had a great bet from him. He thinks, you know, he's constantly playing into day 2, constantly doing well, top 32s. We see it all the time. He's like, it's kind of frustrating. I'm much a better player than I was when I was younger. I'm much more consistent. I hate it. I used to go to the Pro Tour, I'd crap out, then I'd top 8. I'd crap out, and then I'd top 8. It was much more fun.
Yeah, well, Raphael Levy would change with that. I guess Raph will be on here somewhere. Patrick Chapin is next, the innovator. Again, another great writer and deck builder. 4 Pro Tour top 8s.
Remember that amazing World Championship match between him and Hall of Famer Gabriel Nassif, one of the principal members of the Star City team. Let's keep the slide moving on. There you see Darwin Castle. He's someone we haven't seen in a while. You know, doing really well at one of these events. This is one of his best tournaments in a long time. 8 Pro Tour top 8s, 1 title. He of course won a team event with Rob Daugherty and R&D member Dave Humphreys.
Washington, 1999,
Yeah.
and
He also played in the first ever Pro Tour.
the first ever Pro Tour, 1996, New York. Do you know how you qualified for that? You picked up the phone and said, "I'd like to play." It's not quite like that anymore, is it?
Bram Snepvangers. Here, obviously a formidable player. He's got 4 Pro Tour top 8s, but also here for his community contributions.
Yeah.
Someone who's been a judge, a tournament organizer, you know, helped rise the tide of Denmark, the Netherlands, I should say. You know, to make all these great players, great judges. A tremendous community contribution from Bram Snepvangers, and just, you know, a kick-ass Magic player on top of that.
Yeah, I think as a community, just absolutely extraordinary. Also from the Netherlands, it's Team Von Dutch when he won his Pro Tour in Seattle. Jelger Wiegersma, 192,000 lifetime winnings in dollars, 366 lifetime pro points. A startlingly good player.
Yeah, and talk about consistency.
Yeah. He kind of defines the idea of my baseline is top 32. I'll start.
Finished 17th at his first Pro Tour.
Sure, I'll start at 11-5, and then see whether I win a couple of extra on top to make top 8.
Okay, and moving on. We're not done. There's still more players.
And here's Raf Levy with the all-time leader in pro points, 540 right now.
18 Grand Prix top 8s, 3 Pro Tour top 8s, 4th at Worlds and Chicago. Almost $250,000 in winnings. Still a very young guy for someone who's been around forever. He's in his early 30s.
Absolutely, tremendous. Are we done?
Well,
now, what's
we're
this
done.
about?
These are the other players in the room right now who are all eligible for induction into the Hall of Fame in Dublin, Ireland at Pro Tour Theros. All of these players are eligible to be voted for by the Player and Selection Committee. A couple, any names jump out at you? All of them?
Yeah, just a bit. There's Mr. Louis Scott Vargas down here.
Mr. Ben Stark.
There's a Shota Yasuoka and a Tomoharu Saito of Japan.
Paul Rietzel and Ivan Flock.
Isn't this guy in the top 8?
Craig Wesco could be adding to his already impressive top 8 total.
Text coverage.
And not pictured, but here, not playing, Billy Jensen missed the Hall of Fame by 1 vote. 1 vote, a lone vote last season. Could very well be seeing him in Ireland this year.
Those people are the history of our game, but they're not just the past. They're the present and the future, and they are just startling Magic players.
20 years later, they remain end bosses at the Pro Tour. People you have to get through. You're playing in the last round. You got to play Gabriel Nassif. You got to play Brian Kibler. You got to get through John Finkel at the start of day 2 of a Pro Tour. You know, these guys are amazing. I hope you enjoyed our look inside these hallowed halls. For Rich Haga, I'm Brian David Marshall, saying bye.